First of all, I would like to thank you for granting this interview to Student Journalist Council. Thank you so much, sir. So, my first question to you. You have been one of the notable icons who have been inducted into the Internet Hall of Fame with a significant contribution to the advancement of global Internet. So, when did your excitement start as the whole Internet idea?
I think the exact timing of the historical question about when did you get interested in this, when did you start working on this, that's not easy to answer. It was in 1971. I had finished my PhD at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Bombay. Actually, the PhD was submitted to the IIT Bombay. IIT Bombay, I was an employee of Tata Institute of Fundamental Research as a research associate, and I was a student at IIT Bombay. So I submitted my PhD and it was accepted, and then I went off as a postdoctoral researcher to Carnegie Mellon University for a couple of years. It was a most exciting time in the history of computer networks. In 1969, early work had begun on a network called the ARPANET, Advanced Research Projects Agency Network, funded by the US government. And the ARPANET was already working in Carnegie Mellon University when I went there. It connected a few places, a supercomputer center in Illinois and MIT and Carnegie Mellon and so on, a few places. And therefore I must have been within the first 500 or 1,000 people to get an email address. And there was a room about as big as this with about 40 teletypes. In those days there were no what we call as cathode ray tube terminals. They were not there. Clang, 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 teletypes were there. And they were all mechanical, electromechanical. 110 bits per second, 110 baud, whatever that meant. You know the difference between baud and bit, some of you might find out. These were 110 baud devices. And we used to sit there and clang away on that. It was a great experience for me. And I had been an electrical engineer, but I have been not a very loyal electrical engineer. I studied power systems here. Electrical engineering was really what is called high current engineering in those days. So we worried about generation, distribution, all that. But when I went to IIT Bombay for my masters, I really wanted to do electronics. And I did electronics, I did MTech in electronics there. And but immediately after electronics, I spent only 2 hours working in the electronics field at the Tata Institute. Fairly quickly I switched to computer science and worked with a professor named R. Narasimhan, who is a real pioneer of Indian computer science. And he had built a computer starting in 1954 in India. He built one of the first computers in India. He built a bigger model which was commissioned in 1960 by Jawaharlal Nehru. And I was not there on the scene at that time. I came only in 1963 as a student into TIFR. As an IIT student doing a BTech, turning up at TIFR and saying, can I do any summer work here? I want to be an intern. And Narasimhan's interest went very far into computer science. He was interested in artificial intelligence, natural language, development of the brain, visual computing, and how does the eye interpret the world we see, how do we solve problems, all these things. I was very excited about all this. And so I started working with Narasimhan. He said, I want to do a PhD with you in the artificial intelligence field. And I worked on natural language and problem solving for my PhD. So I had sort of run away from electronics altogether. But here I was in 71 at Carnegie Mellon, and there was a 110 baud clack clack, and it has done miracles. I remembered some of my electrical engineering, electronics, and I said, hey, with my electronics, I have to understand what is going on in this computer networks. I read about computer networks, and I found most exciting. The great thing was this brand new technology had been sort of designed for India almost. Actually, the guys who designed it for something else. But they designed it for a network which may not be very reliable, where the parts might fail once in a while. And they designed it so that if the lines are not of high quality, if the signal to noise ratio was bad, the signals will still get through.
Yes.
So these were the basic foundations of computer networking. And the basic principle that however unreliable a part of the network is, the whole network could be quite reliable. That however bad the signal noise to ratio was in the wire, you can still get some signal through it, sometime or the other. And if you are not mad about the bandwidth, you can get a lot done with the poor quality infrastructure. And I said, gee, this is exactly what we have back home. And we need, this is the technology for us. If you told me, put 10,000 crores of rupees and build a super fiber optic network and we'll give you everything, I mean, it's no use to me. Because we are not going to get that 10,000 crores of rupees. But if you tell me, take a 50,000 rupee computer and you can program it and you do something, and even if the line is bad, you'll get signals through. My God, it is miracle to me. So I said computer networks is what I want to do. And this is the technology for India. And I'm going to work in this field for the next 25 years. I didn't know exactly how many years I was going to work. I'm going to work in it for some time. Because why some time? I didn't want to give up my artificial intelligence, which is after all what I was most excited about, which I am still excited about to this day. But I was willing to take some time away from artificial intelligence. I ended up taking a lot more time than I expected. And so I got into computer networks. And the day I landed back 2 years later in India, even in artificial intelligence, I gave it a tilt. I did not want to solve the fundamental problems of artificial intelligence. They're no doubt great. I love them. But if I die without those problems being solved, I'm not very much worried. But I would rather see artificial intelligence do something to improve our education. If we can teach people better with artificial intelligence, I think my life would be better spent. So that is the angle I gave to my artificial intelligence work. And I came back in 1973, I wrote a proposal saying we have to set up a computer networks group in Tata Institute. And I would be happy to work in that. And I will be happy to recruit people, train them and do whatever. And Professor Narasimhan was very supportive. And the man who succeeded Homi Baba, Professor M.G.K. Menon, was the director of the Tata Institute. He was very supportive. So we created a small group and I hired 4 people. And we started working. And we dreamt of very exciting things. And that is how in 73 we started the work. And it took almost 15 years for me to get to the day where India would be connected to the internet. But that is another story. We'll come to that.
Your efforts has brought India on the internet map of the world for the first time as early as in 1987. Your achievement has made the entire Indian IT fraternity extremely proud. Can you please tell us in brief about your contribution to our viewers?
Well, partly it is the building of a group in networking technology. It is partly doing a variety of experiments and partly finding collaborators with whom to work and partly sharing the workload. All this together, it is the adoption of a technology into India. And the networking technology is a very important technology. And as engineers, we should never forget one thing. We do about 3% of the research or 2% of the research that the world does on any technology. For the amount of money we spend, that's all we can do, 2%, 3% of the world's research, which means all the research output is not going to come out of our own country. We will learn a lot from the other guys. We have to be fair. And if they spend 30 times more, they will come up with 30 times more discoveries. We have to learn them. We sometimes borrow, we sometimes adopt. But we can never blindly copy. You always have to understand. You have to understand what you have to solve. You can't take you can take, borrow medicine from him, but you can't borrow a medicine that is designed to cure his fever. You have to borrow medicine which will cure your fever, or you have to find out some suitable medicine for your fever. So from that point of view, it is this adoption of a technology that is to which I was a contributor. Such things are never done by a single man. It's always done by a team. And I had the pleasure of being the leader of a team like that. But later there were more teams to come up in the country, and I had the pleasure of working with those teams. And one of the early teams we worked with was the Space Application Center in Ahmedabad. By around 1978, we had a signed agreement with the Space Application Center Ahmedabad to build, you are going to talk to me about VSAT, you said.
Yes, sir.
We built what we jokingly call, VSAT is supposed to be a very small aperture terminal. Today, the Tata Sky dish you have on your balcony is about that size. But when we started working in 1978, my friends in Ahmedabad said, look, you will be happy. We learned space technology from them, and we shared with them what our computer and software technology we had. They said you will be safer if you have a 20-foot dish. And what is a 20-foot dish? You cannot bring that into this room. Even if you demolish this wall, the 20-foot dish won't come into this room. It's that big, huge, and it has 3.5 tons of steel and aluminium and all that. We put up a small concrete building and borrowed their design and built a dish there. It was a 20-foot dish, and we jokingly called it the world's largest VSAT. VSAT is supposed to be a very small terminal, but our very small terminal was 20 feet big. But we had the pleasure of working with an Indian satellite. And with that Indian satellite, Apple, we could send a signal from TIFR, a 32-bit data signal would go up to the satellite and be received in Delhi at the Telecom Research Center. By the time we were working with the PNT also, Postal Telegraphs Research Center in Delhi, TRC. And we were working with Space Application Center Ahmedabad. So we had a 3-node network running on an Indian satellite, running on Indian-made computers, running on Indian-made software, and it was running packet switching, and it all these wonders of error correction and this and that. So we really had great fun in 1980. But we also had another colleague in our center. A colleague named Sadanandan was running our database department. We were talking to him about electronic mail, and he was willing to send a young man named V.S. Rao to the US for training, and we had some fellowships. So we sent this young man to the US, and he learned the electronic messaging technology, as it is called. He came back and implemented an email system in 1980 on our computer. And we had a couple of 100 people using email in 1980, not connected to anybody else, only on our computer. Except on occasion, we would go out to Pune or some such place, use a telecom modem and dial in and read email from Pune or send email from Pune or give a demonstration or whatever. So slowly networking began like this. 1986 was a very important occasion. A colleague of ours who was chairman of the CMC Limited, which is now owned by the Tatas. At the time it was a Government of India company. Dr. P.P. Gupta became secretary to the Government of India. He accepted a proposal from us to create what is called the ERNET, Education and Research Network. He said, we will find the money for it. Government of India must have spent 100 crores of rupees or more on the ERNET over a period of time. But as for the duration that I was working with the ERNET project was launched in 1986, and it involved all the IITs, it involved the Indian Institute of Science, and it involved the Department of Electronics office in Delhi, and it involved my center. By the time we had broken off from TIFR to form the National Center for Software Technology, which is a daughter institute of the Tata Institute. And it is an independent autonomous institute under the Government of India. I was heading it as the director in Juhu, Bombay. And so the 6 centers collaborated to create the Education and Research Network. And in 1987, we started early experiments to connect to the world. by modems, using modems and X.25 networks, and later using leased lines and things like that. We managed to get a connection to Amsterdam and then to Maryland in the United States, and got the Internet protocol, TCP/IP, running over these networks, got electronic mail running. This achievement I should credit to my team. There was a team of about 5 or 6 people, key people in my lab who did all this work. It was my pleasure to be the leader of the team, and so that is the primary thing. The working over a period of time, adopting the technology, understanding the technology, worrying about its applications, and we also made some bets. The bet was, what is the greatest thing to which you can apply networking to? What is most important? We decided the most important thing was to connect institutions. We all live isolated lives. If you are in Coimbatore, you talk only to people in Coimbatore. And fortunately today it is different. In those days it was very much that. And if you are in Bombay, you talk to people in Bombay. The most exciting thing for a scientist is to have the world on tap, to have something called email, to have something called the web. In those days actually there was no web, 87. Web was to come later. There was a very peculiar thing called Gopher. In the early 90s we started fooling around with Gopher, maybe 1989 or whatever. Gopher was a text-based system which had some of the properties of the World Wide Web. It had something like the notion of a URL, a way to refer to a document stored on a machine somewhere, and to be able to go and get that document. So with Gopher we could get information from all over. We were excited by this. So our bet was the Education and Research Network was primarily to connect the educational and research institutions of India, to give them the great facility of being able to communicate with each other freely, to share documents and to share these facilities with the world. And that I thought was the best bet we could have ever made. We did not worry about making the banks work better. We did not worry about making the airlines sell more seats to passengers, which were all important, which we did later in some way or the other. But making people talk to each other is the fundamental great application. And to do the technical work and to understand the technical work, to understand the software was all important.
So earlier we were a country where the internet was limited to the hands of few, but now we have come up a very long way and we have seen a lot many of users connected with the world through internet. So how do you comment on India's IT network infrastructure of date, and do you really think that we have reached the place where we should have reached, or do you really think that we must do something more substantial in the future? So what is your take on this entire IT infrastructure as of now?
Well, one thought is, I think I'm not very thrilled with the numbers game that some people play. To say, we all want a 16 megabit per second connection to every home and all that. I don't think it's very important. In fact, I had calculated in 1972 or 73 that we used to have telegrams in those days. All the telegrams of India, there were about 2 million of them per day. All those 2 million telegrams could be sent through 164 kilobit wire. And that is a dial-up modem today, right? One single. And I was dreaming about a special satellite. And I published a paper about a special satellite designed to carry email around the world. And I argued that 2 million telegrams, all the telegrams we had in India, could be sent through this one satellite link running at 64 kilobit. So, bandwidth, huge bandwidth is not per se very important. It's convenient to have good bandwidth, undoubtedly. How satisfied should we be about our infrastructure? I think we have a lot of reason to be unhappy about the infrastructure today. I think 10% of Indians have just about everything. We speak English, we send our children to the best schools available, we send them to the best colleges available, and we get reasonably good health care, and we have internet, we have smartphones in the pocket, we have a car in the front of the door. Okay, that's 10% of us. Maybe it's 5 to 15%. Where it is exactly, it's the economist to worry about. But look at the others. How many school children today have the comfort of being able to get anything out of the internet and read it? I talked about this morning, I was talking about the fact I tried to use in the last 5 or 6 years, I've been mostly concentrating on using the internet for education. And when you use the internet for education, you ask the question, here is a schoolgirl, 8th standard or 9th standard. She comes and says, uncle, I have to write an article about rice tomorrow. Can you help me? So my first thought is to say, why don't I download the article on rice in the Wikipedia and give it to her? It is 26 pages or something like that. Okay, I downloaded, print it and give it to her. Then I realized she doesn't have the English to understand the Wikipedia article. First problem. Second, I was able to download it because I have 16 megabit per second at home. But even on my cell phone, I have 3G, so I can download it for 1.5 rupees. That 6 megabit article or whatever, 6 megabyte article. For her, the same cell phone company will charge 18 rupees. Why? She doesn't have a data plan. I have a data plan for which I pay 250 rupees a month. She doesn't have a data plan. For her it is 18 rupees. For me it is 1.5 rupees. Now which school child do you think will go to the Wikipedia and read it? And which school child wants an article in the Wikipedia in English? So we got one hell of a long way to go.
Sure, sir, sure.
You go to a major hospital and if they suddenly tell a patient, I'm sorry, your husband has hepatitis B, is a very serious disease, and etc., etc. What will the poor woman know about hepatitis B? What will the poor man know about hepatitis B? Which doctor will spend 10 minutes explaining hepatitis B to them? And what can they get out of the internet on hepatitis B and read? In which language? So I do think I absolutely have no reason to pat ourselves on the back.
Sure, sir. Sir, according to you, which IT innovation today, in your view, has the highest potential for impacting and improving public interest in general and human life in particular?
Obviously you have a technical question there. Am I going to say it is, there might be something like Li-Fi, which is using like Wi-Fi but using light instead of radio waves. I don't think anything like that, Li-Fi or anything like that is going to come and change our lives dramatically.
Okay, sir.
It is not a pure technical solution to a social or economic problem. We have to recognize what is important in our lives. What is important is what are our problems.
Yes, sir.
So what is going to be important will depend upon what our major problems are. We have to solve our problems. What are our needs? What are our desires? So if you look at that, I would say engineers trying to think like full-fledged human beings, not as technicians. If you're a welder, I can imagine. Hey, weld it and give it to you. But you are not a welder. You are trying to think, apply your mind, and you have to find the problem, you have to find the solution, you have to decide which problem to work on, why you should work on it, how much it is worth, who is it going to benefit. So we have to be full-fledged people, and we have to solve problems with our technology. I think that is more important than just waiting for one mysterious technology to come and change everything.
All right.
But let me say this. I think a sudden 5% jump in the efficiency of solar cells will do something to this country.
Will do wonders, yes, sir.
And a small invention somewhere on room temperature superconductivity, somehow making superconductivity more easily usable in technical equipment would make a difference. I think it will make the kind of difference in the next 50 years that computers have made in the last 50 years in my life.
Right.
So I think there are technical things that might happen, but more than technical things, I think we need people who worry about how to use technology to make a difference to people.
All right, sir. So recently we had allegations made by a former NSA contractor who leaked the surveillance practices of his own country USA. Now, coming to the point of privacy of data and information in this network world, what would you say about the righteousness involved in this type of snooping activity by the government? So do you really think that will privacy become a thing of the past? And what according to you will this have an impact on the cloud initiative by any organizations?
I think the biggest danger to our privacy comes out of the desire to look for freebies. Suppose there was an email system which somebody gave you free, but in return, their computers would read every email you send, pick up keywords in it, and choose what advertisements they will show to you. You are giving up your privacy. And maybe it doesn't matter to you. Honestly, to me, it appears if some dumb fool wants to waste his time reading my email, is welcome to it. I have no secrets. And therefore, but sometimes you might wonder, will it fall into bad hands? Will somebody know when I am traveling out of town? So that they know people at home will be having one person less to defend them? Will it cause a problem? So to some extent I think privacy is worrisome. To some extent we can ignore privacy, as most of us do. But it comes out of partly the desire not to pay for services. If somebody offered me a $20 a year service for email which is not easily, which doesn't betray my privacy, I would pay the $20. As a matter of fact, I am paying $20 a year for an email service which doesn't even assure me of privacy. And therefore, I think partly we have to look at it this. My question to the GCT engineers would be, why the hell are you guys not thinking of a secure email service as a service you can run and make $100 million out of? You have to run a business. If you don't have daddy's money to invest into it, don't worry. Somebody will put the money into it. You can be a chief engineer. But you have to think about creating a business, creating value for people. Privacy is worth having, privacy is worth paying for. And somebody is going to make a lot of money providing privacy by giving and charging them for it. I think we have to be doing it. What is wrong?
So what would be your advice to any entrance in the IT field, both in research as well as in industry in the terms of future scope? Do you really think that IT field will continue to help generate wealth and provide lucrative career to young aspirants in the years to come? Or do you really think that it has started losing its luster?
I think words like IT field and all that are largely meaningless. I think we should sort of learn to grow beyond them. I must tell you a little talk I heard in 1971 when I went to Carnegie Mellon. In the first 15 days, they have an immigration course, and in a hall like this, all of us who have come from outside, the PhD students, the postdocs, the new MTech students, we all sit in a hall, and they invite 10 great people to come and lecture. And one of the great men who came to lecture in those lectures was the man who is called the father of computational complexity. I will remember the name in a minute. And he had an interesting, he came from Cardiff, and he gave a talk. And his talk was about the future of computer science. And he said in 1971, where will computer science be 10 years from now? He says it will be dead. And how will it be dead? He says the same way the electrical engineering is dead today. How is electrical engineering dead? So look at those guys. In the next building was the electrical engineering building. Look at those guys. First floor, there is a ground floor. And there is one man with the rotating machines, one man working on visual pattern recognition, and one man working on some magnetic devices, magnetic amplifiers, one man working on something else. What is common to all of them? The toilets on the ground floor are common. And the vending machines are delivering soft drinks are common. Nothing else is common in electrical engineering. The core science is missing. They have diverged so much. Electrical engineering means anything and everything. Of course, in US parlance, electrical engineering includes electronics. It had become very big. But did electrical engineering die? No, it succeeded. It succeeded by having so much diversity. It succeeded by conquering so many different problems. So what
Will the IT field succeed?
this professor said was essentially that computer science will become equally diverse and it'll cover so many things. Similarly, information technology itself today has spread very widely. I think the trick is to say, not to say, I am a computer science person, I'm an electrical engineer, I'm an electronics engineer, all this is irrelevant. The main difference is, are you a thinking human being who can adapt to the world as the world evolves and learn whatever is necessary and do whatever is necessary? Or are you one of those who is comfortable typing yourself in a rigid classification and sitting in one corner and thinking everybody else is a fool? So from that point of view, I think the question of whether IT will flourish or not, I think is largely irrelevant.
So, Government College of Technology, Coimbatore is one of the oldest institutions in the country. It was set up way before IITs and NITs came into picture. But still, GCT doesn't feature among the list of institutions who are pursuing cutting-edge research. Do you really think that it's just the media's obsession with IITs? Because even you are considered to be an alumnus of IIT Bombay rather than GCT. So, what according to you can be done by the institution as a whole and students in particular to change this particular perception?
You know, one of the problems is very often as engineers. Somebody was lamenting today that there was something called engineering economics. Professor Dr. Hanumanthaya was talking about that. There was something called engineering economics, and somebody decided someday to remove it from the engineering syllabus. Did you take a course in engineering economics?
Yes, sir.
You did?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is it there now?
Yes, sir.
It is still there.
Yes,
Somebody reintroduced it probably, yeah. Now the trouble is very often engineers forget the social and economic context in which we have to work. We can't work in the absence of a context. And the context is, you must remember, I talked about the 10% of the people in India who have everything. Most of the people in IIT are from the 10%. You know, it may not be 90% of the people in the IIT are from the top 10% of the people, but it might be 70% of the people in the IIT are from the top 20% of the India. So there is a correlation between the socio-economic environment in which you grew up and the whether your parents, what kind of education did they have, how well could they teach you at home, and what kind of school could they send you to. Therefore, when you say IITs are doing very well, yes, they are doing well, but I think we should be equally proud of engineering institutions all over India, which are probably doing very, very valuable things socially, which is we deal with people not necessarily from that socio-economic strata. We deal with a whole lot of people with the lower economic strata, and we do well with them, and many of them do extremely well.
Yes, sir.
And so I think there is nothing to be ashamed of, and we ought to be proud of what we do. But there is a certain confidence that comes to people who have been fortunate in life, and we have to ask ourselves the question, can we give that confidence to our students? Irrespective of what family background a young man comes from. I hope you will all go and read the very well-known story of Steve Jobs. You might have read about that, right? About particularly his convocation address, what is called the commencement talk at Stanford, where he talks about his being born and being abandoned as a young child, or given up for adoption, and so on, so on.
Yes,
And how he was a very poor student in the Reed College, where he could not afford to pay the tuition fees, and how he used to go to the Hare Krishna temple, used to walk there in order to eat the free prasadam that was available. So you have to read that.
Yes, sir.
Now I think that is the stuff that I think we have to share with our students. The confidence that irrespective of where you come from, you have a chance to be a free human being. You have to be a chance to be as successful as anybody else. And we have to give that confidence. So if I find anything to complain about some of our students, it might be that they're a bit timid. the world frightens them a little bit. And they are not daring enough to say, to hell with the world. I am equal to anybody else. And I think we have to give them that confidence. So from that point of view, I think we don't have to run races with anybody else. Others come from with different backgrounds, they come with other strengths. And, but so what? We come with what we have, and we have plenty. We should not be ashamed of what we have.
So my final question. If given a chance to interact with GCTians, what will you tell to convince them to pursue a career in research, and what is your message to GCTians in general?
I think breadth of knowledge is important. It's difficult for you to be doing research by doing something very narrow. I believe that a lot of excitement in research comes from multidisciplinary activity, multidisciplinary knowledge, and networking of colleagues and friends. You know, it's great that we are able to talk to somebody who is working for the blind. Suddenly a conversation with blind children. And that might be far more valuable than 100 textbooks you read in one particular field somewhere. So from that point of view, my advice would be read broadly. Visualize the world as it is going to be in the next 50 years. What is your dream? What do you think the world will be 50 years from now? Where do you think is the promise? What technology? And would you like to bet your life on that technology? And how many people do you know in that area? How much have you read about that? Think about that. Look ahead. You know, we do not say, you know, I wish to go to that great place without knowing how to get there. You know, a map is a very good tool. And similarly, to know if you want to get far into the future, visualize what the future will be. Read about the future. A lot of people are already thinking about what the future could be. What will happen in solar energy? What will happen in superconductivity? What will happen in artificial intelligence? What will happen in computing? Unless you are in tune about what might happen and what is likely to happen, how are you going to place your bets? So research is a bit like a chess game. You have limited resources, you have got only one life. And you have to play that game rather well, intelligently. And you have to know enough about the lay of the land to play that game.
Thanks a lot, sir. It's been a pleasure interacting with you.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.